Iona. Few places in Scotland can compare to this wee rugged island. Found off the west coast of Mull, this holy place has seen miracles, monks and monarchs over the centuries. To this day, it still draws thousands of visitors every single year, but why? Come on this wee journey with me to find out, following in the footsteps of kings. While most travellers head to the spot where Saint Columba set up his monastery in the 6th century, we're also exploring some of the less visited parts of the island. If you enjoy stories of history, folklore and legend from around Scotland, remember to like this video and give me a follow.
Now, I'm on the road to Iona. It's a place of pilgrimage, and it's still a place of pilgrimage today because it takes a bit of effort to get there. Now, I'm on the Isle of Mull. You've got to go to Mull if you want to go to Iona. And I'm leaving from Tobermory, and it's about an hour and a half drive all the way around Mull. If you went straight from the ferry that goes from Oban to Craignewer, it's about an hour, more or less. But it's an hour on a very winding road, single track for a lot of it. So just, if you're planning on making a journey, just be aware of that. Make sure you have a confident driver. But I like the fact that Iona still takes a bit of effort to get to. You know, you've got to, if you're leaving from somewhere like Edinburgh or Glasgow, and I know the world doesn't revolve around those two, but it takes you about 3 hours to get to Oban, then an hour ferry to get to Mull, and then an hour drive to get to Iona. Well, to get to the end of Mull, where you have to get another little ferry to get to Iona. And it makes it more special, I guess. And it also, I guess, means it's not entirely overrun. If it was a quick hop from somewhere like somewhere else, then who knows? It still gets busy. I mean, not at this time of year, it's February, the middle of February, although it is the school holiday, so who knows, maybe it will be busy. But anyway, enough yapping from me, and we'll see what it's like when we get there.
Finally, I got to Fianfort, but it was so windy that you could barely hear me. But that's Iona over there, just a short hop over the sound. Even before you get there, this wee corner is stunning, even in the gloomy February weather. You should always give yourself some time before the ferry, especially here, since the kiosk in the old terminal does a great cooked roll for breakfast. Now, it's passengers only on this ferry, unless you're a local, so pack your walking boots, although nothing is too far away here. It costs just a few pounds each for a return ticket. The journey takes around 10 minutes or so, and while I make no promises, I have seen dolphins playing in the waves here before. The Abbey is best seen from the water, and as you approach, just remember that hundreds of thousands of pilgrims have witnessed this exact view over the last 1500 years or so. I've been to Iona many times before, but this trip was going to be a little different. Usually I focused on the Abbey building itself, then up to the white strand of the monks, but today, after those spots, I'm going to take you past a bay at the back of the ocean and onto Saint Columba's Bay. I did want to include Dundee, but I'll get a spoiler for you. I didn't. Mostly because I would have lost my kilt to the wind, and I don't want banned from the island. Leaving Martyrs Bay behind, past the main street on Iona, the first ruins you'll come to are the old Nunnery. Now, the Abbey gets so much attention that this incredible spot often gets largely ignored, even though it's 800 years old. Founded around the year 1200 by Ranald, son of the great warlord Somerled, he made his sister Beatrice, or Bethag, the first prioress. It's a beautiful place, where the Augustinian sisters would have lived a quiet life of prayer, hosting various female pilgrims to Iona. Many would have been illegitimate or unmarried daughters of nobility, as well as widows sent here to live a comfortable but secluded life. In the grounds, you'll spot the bases for old crosses that once lined the pilgrims' route to the Abbey. It's thought there were once 350 crosses on the island, but today only a handful still remain. Time to head to the Abbey, the main highlight of Iona, and no matter where else you want to visit on the island, this is unmissable. The story of Iona is intrinsically linked to the story of Saint Columba, so for storytelling purposes, I'm going to jump forward in my day to later on when I was able to sit inside and give you a little background on who this important historical character was.
Now, Columba was born in 521 into a royal household. His name, Columba, it's not his real name, his name comes from Columcille, the dove of the church. He studied under Saint Finian, and it was actually a conflict with his old teacher that brought Columba to Scotland. It was all due to do with plagiarism or copyright, or whoever you want to call it. But basically, he copied Saint Finian's Book of Psalms without asking him. And the saint was so furious he asked him to destroy it, and Columba refused. And basically one thing led to another, and we have this huge battle over in Ireland where thousands of people die. Now, Columba was so crushed by this that he was the cause of all this, or at least this is one version of the story, that he goes into self-imposed exile. He leaves Ireland wants to sail far enough away until he can no longer see Ireland. And he arrives in Scotland, but he does not arrive in Iona. He arrives at the south of Kintyre, a place called Southend, where you'll find Columba's footprints. And anyway, he thinks, great, I'm here. And he turns around, he looks back after what must have been a pretty arduous journey in a wee coracle, just to find out that he can still see the northern part of Ireland. So he gets back in his wee boatie, and his men row on, and eventually they come to Iona. Not to where the Abbey is, they come to Columba's Bay, at the very, very south of Iona. Now, Iona just becomes this incredibly important place. This is not where Christianity started in Scotland. We have much older saints than Columba. In fact, Columba's teacher, Saint Finian, learnt at, I don't think it was from, but he certainly learnt at a monastery set up by Saint Ninian, one of Scotland's oldest saints, and somebody who should really be better known. But Columba is this iconic Gallic figure, and it was the Gallic side of Scotland that came to sort of revere him. The cult of Columba really built up, and Iona stayed at the very heart of that. It was unbelievably important, and it became a place for pilgrims like it is today.
Time to rewind now, since before you get to Iona Abbey, you'll pass by this, the Rélig Oran. Now, it's free to enter, unlike the Abbey, and as well as being in a beautiful spot, this old graveyard is unbelievably important.
Now, I've got bad wind outside and a bad echo inside. Hopefully you can hear me all right with the microphone. But I am sitting in the Oran's chapel in the Rélig Oran, and I thought it's a perfect place to tell you the story of the person it's named after. And it just so happens that story is in my book, and I don't promote my book nearly enough, so I'll put a link to it in the wee description box thing. It's short stories from around Scotland behind real places you can go and visit, like Iona. So I'll only do half of this one because the other half talks about Iona itself, but it's about the building of Saint Columba's original perfect monastery, and it didn't have the smoothest of beginnings. Every day the holy men would dig foundations, but every morning they found their work mysteriously undone. Then Columba had a vision. The only way to construct his church was to bury one of his followers beneath it, and so Oran volunteered himself. It was a tragic day, but the brave man was buried, and the church finished in no time. Days passed, and Columba's guilt didn't fade away. He decided to uncover his friend's face just to say goodbye once more. Oran suddenly opened his eyes and began to scream wildly that he had seen no evidence of heaven nor hell. That wasn't something Columba had been expecting, so he picked up a shovel and he quickly filled the grave back in. But at least Oran is in good company with kings and chiefs. But let's just hope he's found some peace after all that time. A rough beginning for Columba's monastery in the story, but a good one. Now, most of what we know about Columba, most of the information about his life, his miracles, his story, and the construction of Iona comes from another book, this one. Now, it's not quite as entertaining as mine, I've got to say. It's a bit of a harder read, but it was written, about 1400 years ago, so fair enough. It's the life of Saint Columba by a Dominic. He was an abbot here at Iona about 100 years or so after Columba, so reasonably recent. But in here we learn lots of things about how Columba arrived in Iona, established his church, and then went out doing his missionary work around Scotland. He was known as the Apostle of the Northern Picts. And the Picts were basically the ones that had everything outside of Argyll at that time in Scotland in the middle of the 500s. So he went up the Great Glen, along Loch Ness to Inverness, down through Perthshire, all of that, preaching as he went, converting Pictish chiefs and kings. Now it's said that 48 kings lie buried in the Isle of Iona. Not all of them King of Scots. There are also Norwegian kings, I believe, possibly kings of Ireland as well, I'm not entirely sure. But some of our most famous kings are, and that's Kenneth MacAlpin. Macbeth lies here somewhere. We don't know exactly where the locations of all those have been lost and which stones. I mean, there are some stones that are almost blank. There are other ones inside the abbey that we're about to go and see. We don't know who many of them. They didn't really write their names on them. Now, it became not just a burial place for kings, but also where important chiefs, so chiefs of clans MacKinnon, MacLean, MacLeod, MacDonald, all of them came here to be buried. It was a special last trip for them. So it's a very, very special place, and it's not a big graveyard. But when you're in it, I do anyway. I certainly feel it that it's a special location. And here we are, Iona Abbey, one of the holiest spots in all of Scotland. This is known as the Street of the Dead, or Srad Dan Marv, I think. Hope nobody is going to be offended by my Gaelic pronunciations. This is a route that kings, chiefs, important people who were going to be buried in Iona, this was their last route along this very path that I'm walking now, and it's just incredible to think. Now, before we get to the Abbey, which really has its roots in the 1200s, this was the heart of Columba's monastery. Columba's monastery would have been made out of wood, and it would have been much, much simpler. I mean, that was the whole point. It was supposed to be a Christian ideal of a simple life. And this is Torra and Abba, the mound, the hill, whatever you want to call it, of the abbot, where Columba had his little writing desk. And as you can see up here, at one point there was a high cross. You won't be getting any of those nice little shots of me walking around to cut between scenes because it's so blowy. You'll probably see right up my kilt. And that's a good way to get banned from YouTube. This is St. Martin's Cross. Most impressive here in Iona. It stood in this spot for about 1200 years. One of the oldest, if not the oldest, still standing Celtic cross in existence, because the Celtic crosses were invented here. Now this is a replica of St. John's Cross, so it's got the biggest arms, and funnily enough those arms did snap. So it's in the museum now, around the back, which we'll go into. This is St. Columba's shrine, and it sits on the spot where Columba was buried, although his relics are no longer here. But it's a nice quiet little spot. Now his abbey here, the monastery, it becomes very wealthy. It becomes a place of learning. Its scriptorium is famous for works that it produced, which is quite ironic considering the whole plagiarism thing that started Columba's story off. But anyway, the amazing, the Book of Kells was written here. You know, it's named the Book of Kells because it's kept in Ireland, or it went from here to the Abbey at Kells later on in life, but it was written right here. Now, there used to be a debate about where it was written, but as far as I know, historians have kind of come to the conclusion that it was written here, which makes it the oldest book written in Scotland that we know of, which is pretty amazing. So I would love to see it come back here. There is a copy in the museum. Now, things were going well in Iona and in Scotland, and then the end of the 700s and 790s, the Vikings arrived. Now, they'd already burned down Lindisfarne. I think that was 793, and that's the north of England, also linked with Columba. That was their first target, where the Vikings really burst on the scene. And yes, I know that Vikings is one of those terms that it wasn't the name for themselves. It's something that means more like pirates or pirating. It was a profession, not a title, as people like to say. But it is a word that everybody understands. When you say Viking, people know what you mean. So the Vikings arrived. You know, Norse, Danes, Scandinavians. And they wreak absolute havoc. Places like Iona are prime targets for them. There is wealth here, and very lightly defended. And it also makes a powerful statement. You're really hitting at the heart of the culture of the place. Not Scotland at that time, but Dalriada. So the first raid is pretty devastating. Iona is laid to waste. We only have these fleeting references in the Irish annals, because we've lost all our Scottish annals, but we know it was pretty devastating. After pretty rapid succession, we have 794, I think the first one was. There's another one a few years later, a few years after that. We have Martyrs Bay is named after a particularly brutal episode in 806, where dozens and dozens of monks were killed. And then things kind of die down. I don't know if it's that, you know, a lot of the monks leave here. Columba's relics are certainly taken away. They're split. Some go to Ireland, some go across to Dunkeld, where they think they'll be safer. But monastic life does continue. Life on Iona does continue. The archaeology reflects that. So we know that it wasn't just abandoned. It just, maybe the importance died down. It was still an important place to be buried anyway. But the Vikings maybe just realised there wasn't as much worth stealing from here anymore. But then in the late 900s, randomly we have another brutal attack, and it takes place at a beach just to the north of here, where I always go right after the Abbey, because it is one of the most beautiful beaches in all of Scotland. Try Banvnam Monach. Again, apologies for my Gaelic pronunciation, but it means the white strand of the monks.
Time to head inside the main church building itself, like thousands of pilgrims have before me.
Hat comes off because I'm inside a church. Now, this abbey obviously is not from Columba's time. A good few hundred years after it. Now, monastic life might have continued on Iona, but it was really revitalised by Ranald, son of Somerled, Lord of the Isles. Ranald was the one who, around about the 1200s, early 1200s, he built this, what I'm standing in right now. And Iona really took its place and became the important spot that it is today, again. Now, unfortunately, like most churches in Scotland, the middle of the 1500s saw a particularly turbulent time with the coming of the Reformation. The Scottish Reformation, 1560 is the date always given, although things obviously took a while either side of that. But anyway, a Catholic abbey was of no use anymore, and it was left to fall to ruin. And you can actually see, I mean, like behind me, the sort of weird ferns and plants and things that really took the root in that time. Now, the abbey amazingly was restored just about 100 years ago. The Duke of Argyll was partly responsible for it, but it was given to what's called the Iona community. And the Iona community still holds services here. I have been to a service in here I came last year, and I just happened to be here on a Sunday, so I got an earlier ferry, and came, I'm sure it was a 10 o'clock service, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. You know, regardless, I mean, they're ecumenical, so it doesn't matter your belief, your faith, what branch of Christianity, or if you're not Christian at all, they're very welcoming. They let you come down, sing a bunch of songs, enjoy yourselves. It's quite special. If you love Scottish history like me, then it is special. And then afterwards, you go through into what was the old, well, the words has escaped me, the square bit. That's really going to annoy me. But anyway, you go through that door over there, and you get an oat cake, and then you go out and you're encouraged to split your oat cake in half, and you share it with a stranger, a random person, so you can get chatting amongst new folk and make new connections, new friends, and it's a great idea. I love it. I don't know if you can hear that, but the wind is absolutely howling through the windows.
Make sure to look down as well as look up when you're inside the abbey. These are previous abbots of Iona from the 1400s, including John McKinnon and his predecessor Dominic Mackenzie. They carried out repairs to the abbey thanks to money raised from pilgrims who travelled to Iona for Columba's feast day on the 9th of June. That helped them spend less time in purgatory. This is the cloister. That's the word I couldn't remember earlier. It's lined with grave slabs taken from the Raelig Oran to protect them from the elements. They don't usually have names, so it's impossible to tell who they are, apart from leading figures from clans like the MacLeans, MacLeods, McNeils, MacDonalds, McKinnons, and many more. There is, however, one that's a little bit special.
This stone here is one of the few ones that we think we know who it is, because there's a name up there. It's believed to be the stone carved for Angus Og MacDonald, the one who supported Robert the Bruce and basically secured the MacDonalds' rise to the Lord of the Isles in place of the MacDougals. The inscription reads, "Here lies the body of Angus, son of Lord Angus MacDonald of Islay."
You could spend a lot of time in the wee museum around the back of the abbey. Some of the most amazing carvings are in here, including the earliest cross-marked stone from the 7th century. Most impressive to me are the effigies of warriors in full armour, dating back over 500 years. One has the name Lachlan inscribed and is most likely one of the chiefs of the MacLeans of Duart. These stones show just how important warrior culture was to the Gaelic West Highland society.
Now, the name Columba comes from his Gaelic name is Colm Keela, which means the dove of the church. And I could have sworn I just saw a dove flying around. Maybe that's a wee nod from Columba, he's saying hello. Now, of course, the history of Iona is incredibly important. It's a huge part of why the island is so special. But it's also an area of extreme natural beauty. It's small, it's only about 3.5 miles long, about a mile wide. It's kind of like a little lump, but the views around it are just fantastic. The views across the Mull that way. There's Dun E up there. I'm not going to have time to climb that, I don't think. It's so windy, I think I would lose my kilt entirely if I went up there. But some of the beaches, these are some of the best beaches you will find anywhere in Scotland. And I'm taking you to one right now.
It's a flat walk, but not a short one, to the White Strand of the Monks. Wild and wonderful at the moment, but if you come back in summer, you'll probably get the whitest sand with the bluest sea, like I did last July. Here's a few clips from then, even though they're the wrong way round. The wind was really picking up now, and I was getting slightly nervous about the ferry home being cancelled, although there are worse places to be stranded. Anyway, I wasn't finished yet. I had a longer hike ahead of me to somewhere I'd never seen before, but first, coffee. Refueled, time to head out to Saint Columba's Bay at the far southwest of the island, and the wind was winning its battle against my microphone. I was trying to tell you that this wee mound is Sheehan Moor, or the Big Fairy Hill. It also became known as the Hill of the Angels, as a monk once followed Columba one night and found him praying on this mound as angels swooped and danced around him. Eventually, you'll come to the bay at the back of the ocean. If you decided to go for a very long swim and headed due west of here, the first land you would hit would be Labrador. There's a wee Molly reference for anybody who's missing it. To get to the bay, you need to cross the Massacres, which is a special feature of Scottish islands. It's incredibly fine grass, found beside beaches where the wild western winds blow sand across them during winter. Then beautiful flowers and lush grass will grow through the spring and summer. This is common grazing land, and also a small golf course. Although, if you spot strange, straight ridges in the ground, that's evidence of the old run-rig farming system. Next, I just needed to make it up a wee hill, the only uphill section I've done all day, before skirting around the loch. Now, this was once the water supply for the whole island, although now that gets piped over from Mull. Keep your eye out for some strange modern art along the way. Then I see it. After about 4.5 kilometres of walking, Saint Columba's Bay. This is where Columba arrived in 563, and the whole story that I've been telling you throughout this video really began. Split in two parts by that giant rock, the left is known as Port na Cúrach, a wee boat like a coracle that Columba and his 12 followers apparently used to sail here. The other side of the bay is known as the Port of the False Men, and I have absolutely no idea why, so if you've any ideas, let me know.
We've made it. 4.5 kilometres later. St. Columba's Bay. Still very windy, so I don't know if you can hear me well or not.
If you have the time and energy, it's worth climbing the wee hill to the left of the bay for these views. That strange spiral down there was apparently created by some ladies on a spiritual retreat around 25 years ago. It's not really supposed to be there, so please don't add to it, walk in it, or create your own. Just remember the golden rule. Leave no trace.
Just while I'm sheltered by these rocks, before I go back out into the windy bit down there, and enjoy the rest and show you around some of St. Columba's Bay, I just want to say, this does, it may sound like I'm just saying it because, I'm making a nice video, but this does feel like a very special place. It's quite a wild trek to get out here. You cross a bit of moorland, you climb a bit of hill. It's nothing bad, but over here it's quiet, it's peaceful. It's nothing like where the abbey and the sort of village, if you like, are today. There's still hustle and bustle there a wee bit. This feels like the special place. To me, anyway. You can make of it what you will. And if you're able, I would highly, highly recommend giving yourself the time to make the trek out here. This is about my 6th trip to Iona, and this is the only time I've found the hours to do this. 3 hours max. no, not max, but 3 hours and you can do it. I'm probably going to do it in just over 2. If I jog back a wee bit. Anyway, it's worth it. That's all I'm saying. I see why they call it a thin place.
One day I'll have the chance to spend a night on Iona, and I think a lot of that trip will be spent right here on this pebbly beach. Keep your eyes open for green speckled stones, evidence of beautiful Iona marble that locals use for things like jewellery. Now, I read a story about a tradition on the Iona community website which makes me think that it's okay to share. You choose 2 stones, throw one of them into the waves. It represents something you want to leave behind. The other goes home in your pocket to represent a new beginning or a commitment. And since I'm getting married this year, and in fact in less than 2 weeks as I record this, that stone now sits on my desk and gives me a wee smile every time I see it. Then sadly I had to rush back to civilization and catch the ferry. I had time for a snack while I waited at least. Look at the boat fighting those waves. Fortunately it's not a long trip. Now, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this journey around Iona. I'd really appreciate it if you could like the video, leave me a comment to let me know what you thought, and share it with your friends, and give me a follow. Make sure you get the next video. So hopefully, I'll see you the next time. Sláinte.